I'm Sophie Cunningham. Sometimes I start bench, sometimes I shoot the ball, and I play for the Indiana FIBA.
There are media days and then there are moments. Most preseason shoots follow the same playbook. Player sits down, answers a few predictable questions, smiles for the camera and moves on. Clean, professional, forgettable. But every once in a while, something happens that nobody planned for, nobody could have scripted, and nobody on that production crew was fully prepared to handle. What went down during the Indiana Fever's latest preseason media shoot wasn't just unexpected. It was the kind of unfiltered, chaotic, genuinely hilarious moment that reminds you why some athletes are just built music differently. Not just on the court, but in every room they walk into. And before we even get into what happened, you need to understand one thing. The moment things went sideways wasn't an accident. It was almost inevitable. Because the person at the center of all of it was someone who has never once in her career managed to stay inside the lines of a normal situation. Someone who doesn't do boring, doesn't do rehearsed, and absolutely does not do calm when the alternative is so much more entertaining. By the time this shoot was over, 5 puppies had been involved. A Caitlin Clark joke had gone viral. A full farm inventory had been casually listed on camera, and a locker room confession had been delivered with the kind of energy usually reserved for someone who has absolutely nothing to hide and zero regrets about any of it. This is the Sophie Cunningham story. And if you think you know how chaotic this gets, you don't. Not yet. To understand why this moment hit the way it did, you first have to understand who Sophie Cunningham actually is. Because she's not just a basketball player with a fun personality. She's genuinely one of those rare people who operates on a completely different frequency than everyone around her. The kind of person where even before anything happens, you can just tell that whatever comes next is going to be interesting. She's been in the league long enough to have built a real reputation, not just for her game, but the way she carries herself in every situation. Whether she's hyping up teammates from the bench, getting mic'd up during games, or just answering what should be a completely routine interview question, there's always this undercurrent of unpredictability. Like a switch that's permanently stuck halfway between professional athlete and someone who just genuinely cannot help being exactly who they are at all times. Her teammates know it, the fans know it, the media knows it, and anyone who has spent more than 5 minutes watching her interact with the world outside of basketball knows that putting her in a relaxed, low-pressure environment doesn't calm her down. If anything, it does the opposite. Remove the structure and Sophie Cunningham expands to fill every inch of available space with personality, which is exactly what made what happened next so perfectly, unavoidably her. On the surface, the media day setup looked completely standard. Camera rolling, interviewer ready, questions lined up. Sophie sits down and introduces herself, which already gives the first hint that this isn't going to follow the usual format. Instead of a straightforward name and position, she goes with something slightly different, telling the camera she's Sophie Cunningham, that sometimes she starts, sometimes she comes off the bench, sometimes she shoots the ball, and that she plays for the Indiana Theater, not the Indiana Fever. It's a small thing, a throwaway joke, but it immediately sets the tone for everything that follows, because that one line tells you exactly what kind of interview this is going to be. One where the answers are going to be real, unfiltered, and completely uninterested in sounding polished. The interviewer probably already knew at that point that the script was going out the window. And then came the question that made everything official. How comfortable would you feel if we brought a puppy in? There was no pause, no thinking it over, no "oh, that's fun" diplomatic response. Her entire expression shifted in real time, like watching someone get handed the best news of their life in the middle of what they thought was going to be a boring afternoon. She lit up instantly and responded with 3 words that made it clear the interview had officially ended and something much better was about to begin. Music, hell yeah, come on. The first puppy walked in and Sophie was gone. Music, not physically, she was still sitting there, still technically. Interview, but mentally, emotionally, completely gone. She grabbed the puppy gently, pulled it close, and within seconds was talking directly to it in a voice that had dropped about 4 octaves softer than anything she had used during the actual interview portion. Not performing for the camera, not playing it up, just genuinely completely absorbed in the fact that there was now a small dog in her hands and nothing else in the world mattered even slightly. She told the puppy it smelled like a little puppy. She asked if it was having fun. She rocked it like she'd already decided it was hers and the paperwork was just a formality. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, she casually mentioned, not as a joke, but as a genuine suggestion, that the puppies should go to her farm. Just like that. The puppies should come to her farm. Problem solved. Interview over. Everyone go home. But the puppies were just getting started. Because what nobody told Sophie, or maybe they did and she didn't process it because there was already a dog in her arms, was that one puppy wasn't the plan. 5 puppies were the plan. And the moment the rest of them came in, whatever thin thread of structure the interview still had completely snapped. 5 puppies in a room with Sophie Cunningham is not a media session. It is controlled chaos at best and a full emotional breakdown at best. Music. She was crouching, laughing, shifting her attention from one dog to the next, trying to make eye contact with all of them simultaneously, asking if everyone was having fun, and at one point literally calling out to the crew because some of the puppies had wandered away from her. "Oh, you guys are the chill ones. Come back. Can you bring them back?" She wasn't joking. She genuinely needed them to come back. She was crouched on the floor, completely surrounded, speaking to each puppy individually like she was determined that none of them would feel left out or overlooked during their brief music time together. The production team was still technically running a media shoot. Sophie had fully transitioned into something that looked much more like a wildlife caretaker doing wellness checks. And then, in the middle of all of it, surrounded by 5 puppies moving in 5 different directions, she looked up and said something that didn't just make the clip funny music. It made it viral. "You guys act like Caitlin's brain." That was it. That was the line. Said casually in the middle of puppy chaos, like the connection had just occurred to her. Naturally, and she saw no reason not to say it out loud. Music wasn't a dig. It wasn't a carefully constructed joke. It was just Sophie looking at 5 overwhelmed puppies running in 5 different directions and deciding that the most accurate comparison she could make was to her teammates' thought process. Music. The internet immediately understood. Clips spread fast. Fans ran with it. The comment section filled up within hours with people losing it over the comparison, tagging Caitlin, quoting the line back. And then Caitlin Clark actually saw it, and her response was exactly what you'd expect from someone who has developed a very specific public persona built on calm, dry, and completely deadpan reactions to chaos around her. She muted it. Immediately. Music, that one word, muted, sent the moment into an entirely different orbit, because now it wasn't just Sophie being chaotic. It was Sophie being chaotic and Caitlin responding with the most perfectly understated music. Clap back. Possible. The contrast between Sophie's full-volume puppy-induced emotional spiral and Caitlin's one-word reaction was exactly the kind of dynamic that fans had already been loving about this team, and this moment captured it better music than anything that had happened in an actual game. After the puppy section wrapped, or more accurately after Sophie was gently separated from 5 dogs she had already mentally adopted, the interview tried to shift back to something resembling a normal format. It did not succeed. The next question was about what scares her more, the ocean or outer space. A fun, light-hearted question designed to ease back into the regular flow of things. Sophie answered without hesitation, outer space. Why? She didn't know. She just doesn't like it. That was the full answer. No elaboration, no follow-up thought, no attempt to explain the fear further, just outer space. Delivered with the energy of someone who has already moved on emotionally from the topic before the sentence is even finished. And then, completely unprompted, without any question leading into it or any logical transition connecting it to anything music that had just been discussed, Sophie introduced her miniature donkey. His name is Kevin. She said it with the same pride and warmth she'd used when talking about the puppies, maybe even a little more, honestly, because Kevin is hers and the puppies were just visiting From there, the farm reveal accelerated into something that the interviewer clearly did not see coming and wasn't entirely sure how to navigate. Kevin, the miniature donkey, was just the beginning. After Kevin came Mark. Mark is a mammoth donkey, which is a different, significantly larger category of donkey, and Sophie described him with the kind of casual energy usually reserved for talking about a normal household pet. She mentioned almost as an afterthought that Mark is actually rideable, like you can get on Mark and go somewhere. She said this like it was a minor detail, rather than the most unexpected piece of information. Delivered in a preseason interview in recent memory. Then came Daniel. Daniel is a mule, 17 hands tall. For context, that's somewhere around 5 and 1/2 feet at the shoulder, which means Daniel is by any reasonable measure enormous. Sophie described him as a big old boy, which is both accurate and somehow the perfect way to describe a 17-hand mule owned by a WNBA player who had just spent the last 10 minutes emotionally bonding with 5 puppies on camera. Music, and finally Josie. Josie is a pony that Sophie got for her nieces. She added with complete honesty that they weren't entirely sure yet if the nieces actually liked Josie. Not whether Josie liked them, whether they liked Josie. It's the kind of detail that makes the whole thing feel even more real, because it's clearly not a prepared story. It's just her life reported accurately with no attempt to make it sound more polished or dramatic than it actually is. By this point, the interview had stopped being a media segment and started being something closer to a documentary, a very good, very unplanned documentary. The farm section eventually wound down, and the interview pivoted to something slightly more conventional, pop culture questions, locker room life, things like that. Sophie was asked about TV shows and immediately brought up Step Brothers. Specifically, she suggested that someone should make a version called Step Sisters and that she would play the Will Ferrell role. There was zero hesitation. It was clearly the first thought that appeared in her mind, and she saw absolutely no reason to filter it before saying it out loud. Then came the locker room question. She was asked if she'd ever taken anything from the team facility. And here's where the complete lack of filter that has defined this entire interview reached its logical conclusion, because Sophie didn't deflect, didn't laugh it off, and didn't give some vague non-answer. She just told the truth fully, specifically, and without a single sign of remorse. Food, drinks, shampoo because she ran out once and needed some, body wash, music, candles that nobody was claiming, so she figured that was fair, face lotion. She listed them like she was reading from a receipt, each item delivered with the same calm, matter-of-fact energy. And when asked how many she'd taken, she shrugged and explained that they said take 1, so she took 5. Not 5. And she said it the way someone says something when they genuinely don't see the problem with it, because in her mind, there wasn't one. Music, they were there, nobody claimed them, she needed them done. That's the full moral framework she applied to the situation, and honestly, it's hard to argue with the internal logic. Here's the thing though, none of this was actually out of character for Sophie Cunningham. That's what made it land so hard for people who had been following her for a while. This wasn't a new side of her. This was just the most concentrated, publicly documented version of something that had been on display for years. She's been caught completely melting over a fan's dog before. Not just petting it politely, music, but the full reaction, the voice change, the whole thing. There was a moment where she held an adoptable dog named Estella during an appearance and made it immediately clear that the dog was basically coming home with her, that the decision had already been made before anyone officially asked. The puppy interview didn't create a new Sophie Cunningham. It just gave the that already existed 5 dogs and a camera and enough time for the world to see exactly what happens when those things combine. And that's actually what separates a moment like this from a regular viral clip. It doesn't feel manufactured. It doesn't feel like someone leaning into a bit or playing up a persona for social media. It feels like documentation, like someone just happened to point a camera at a real person living their actual life, and the result was something that people couldn't look away from. Beyond the chaos, beyond the puppies and the donkeys and the locker room confessions, There is still a genuinely serious basketball player at the center of all of this. Sophie Cunningham didn't make it to the Indiana Fever by being funny. She made it there because she can shoot, she plays physically, she brings competitive energy, and she knows how to contribute on a team that's building towards something real. This season, she's expected to play a meaningful role alongside Caitlin Clark on a Fever roster that has been generating more buzz than almost any other team in the league. She signed a one-year deal worth $665,000, not the longer contract she said she'd hoped for, and she was honest about that too, because Sophie Cunningham is honest about everything, apparently. But she made clear that she's focused, she's ready, and she has no intention of being anything other than exactly what she's always been. That combination, legitimate player, completely unfiltered personality, zero interest in anything other than herself, is exactly why moments like this connect the way they music do. She's not trying to be a character. She's not workshopping material. She's not calculating how something will land online before she says it. She just says it, does it, reacts to it, and moves on. And the rest of us are left watching the clip 3 more times trying to figure out how someone can be that genuinely, effortlessly entertaining without even trying. When look back at this whole interview, the puppy chaos, the Caitlin Clark comparison, the mooding, the farm roster, the stepsister's pitch, the locker room receipt, it's not just a collection of funny moments. It's a portrait, music, a genuinely accurate, completely unposed portrait of who Sophie Cunningham is as a person. And that's why it spread the way it did, not because it was shocking, not because it was controversial, but because it was real in a way that most content, most interviews, most media appearances just aren't. In a league where star power is growing fast and the storylines are getting bigger every season, it's easy to assume that the moments people remember will be the big plays, the championship runs, the records broken. And those things matter, but sometimes what sticks with people isn't the highlight reel. It's the unscripted 5 minutes where someone forgets there's a camera, picks up a puppy, and just becomes entirely unapologetically themselves. Sophie Cunningham turned 5 puppies and 1 throwaway comment about her teammate into one of the most talked about preseason moments of the year, not because she planned it, but because she never plans anything, music, and somehow that's always exactly enough. The Indiana Fever season hasn't even officially started yet, and it's already clear that whatever happens next, boring music, is simply not on the schedule.